Good morning, everyone. As we gather virtually today from all across the Ottawa region, we acknowledge that we are located on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Algonquin people. We recognize their long-standing relationship with this land, which remains unceded.
Before we begin, please note that at any time, viewers may send us questions for Ray Zahab using the Q&A function, or for our live streamers, the link to a Google form showing on the screen, and we will do our very best to ask as many as we can. Also, a reminder that this meet is being recorded for future publication to the NCSSAA YouTube channel. My name is Jenny.
I'm Sia, and we're students in grade 9 at Earl of March High School. We are members of our school's phys ed class.
And we are very excited to be here with Ms. Hill, Mr. Nielsen, and Mr. Salmon's grade 9 phys ed classes, Ms. Port's senior fitness class, as well as everyone viewing this broadcast over our live stream to interview ultra distance runner and Earl of March alumni Ray Zahab.
Welcome, Ray. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. It's an honor to be speaking with you today. Am I allowed to give my presentation?
Yes.
Awesome. So, it's funny, even just the communication that we're having right now, that's the time that we're in, right? I mean, here we are, in the middle of a global pandemic, hopefully towards the tail end of it. And, if you told me a year ago that this would be how I would be presenting to schools, when typically I visit so many schools in a year, I say, there's no way this is not going to happen. And lo and behold, here we are a year later, and we've completely adapted to this form of communication. And I think that that's what makes this time very unique. I think that in each and every one of us truly is an adventurer, an explorer, if you will, because through exploration and adventure, you build resiliency. And it's in tough times and through challenges that we learn about ourselves. And for sure, the pandemic has been a very difficult time for many, many people. It's been horrible. But through the pandemic as well, each of us as individuals, we realize something different about ourselves. We internalize things and experience things in very different and unique ways relative to us. But I've heard from so many young people who have said, wow, I didn't know if I'd be able to make it through, but I did. And I have to tell you, as a professional adventurer and explorer, that's some of the same things that I think about when I'm on an expedition. So a little bit about that. So I'm an explorer, and I don't climb mountains. When people hear the term explorer, they automatically assume that I must be an Everest climber or something else. I'm not. I'm actually a runner, an ultra distance runner. And I cover vast geographies on the planet on my feet. So if you can see this photo, hopefully the internet is working. Here I am standing in some sand dunes in the middle of the Namib Desert. So I ran 1,850 kilometers from South Africa to very close to the Angolan border in the middle of summer. And I ran as far as I could each day, most days over 70 kilometers, while navigating, finding my way through sand dunes and canyons and across salt flats, carrying with me the supplies that I would need to survive for one day at a time. Now, it's a hot desert, like 50, 55 degrees Celsius every single day. So it's not like you're going to run 70 kilometers in 50-degree heat carrying all the water you need. So the guy that took this photo, my buddy John, would meet with me as often as he could, every 20 or 30 kilometers, in a four-wheel drive vehicle, going all the way around trying to find his way to a spot that he could actually get to me, and he'd resupply me with water. On the other hand, some of my other expeditions, what I do is I go unsupported. So previously supported. John takes a photo of me, gives me some water, and I head off into the next sand dune. When I'm in the Arctic regions of the world or colder regions of the planet on winter expeditions, I'm self-contained, which means I don't have any outside help. There's no support whatsoever. And I carry with me and drag with me in a sled everything that I need to survive the entire time that I'm on the expedition. This photo was taken in the Canadian Arctic on Baffin Island last January 2020. And I had with me everything I needed to survive in temperatures down to -60. So depending on the type of expedition will depend on how much I have to drag with me in these colder places. This photograph was taken of me. That's me in the front there. And then my teammate Stefano from Italy. And we were crossing in this photograph the Kamchatka Peninsula in Far East Russia. To this point in this photograph, we were 19 days completely unsupported, self-contained. Everything we needed contained in larger sleds in this case, because we were out there longer than I was in the previous photograph. And everything is there: tents, food, supplies. Incidentally, the person who's taking this photo, who's standing at the top of this mountain, is John, the same guy that took the photo in Namibia. And this would be the first time that we would see him in so long. So doing the colder expeditions has its difficulties. Colder parts of the world, especially in winter, are very remote and mostly inaccessible. If you want to get to the start, you got to take a helicopter. And once you get dropped in these helicopter, four-wheel drive, snowmobile, whatever you got to do, once you're dropped, you're on your own. So you have to be prepared and understand the environment that you're going to be in, because hopefully and truthfully, we don't want to put others at risk to come get us if something does go wrong. So we have to be very well prepared. And who better to learn from than these colder regions of the planet, than people that live in these regions? And this is my friend Billy. He lives in an area, an island called Kikik-Tarjuak off the eastern coast of Baffin. And I've been visiting him and learning from him for many, many years. Now we've done so many projects together. He's a very dear friend. And on one of our trips where I met with him to go learning, we were driving across the Arctic Ocean on snow machines. And as you can see in this photograph, which I hopefully you all can see, you see snow. Well, this is the ocean, frozen. And on top of that ice is all this snow. And dotting the landscape were these giant footprints, the size of like a seat cushion, like in your chair, right? And we're driving by on our snow machines. We see these footprints and we pull up beside them. I can't believe the size of these things. And I look and I said, oh my gosh, are those polar bear tracks? I'd never seen them. And he says, yeah, those sure are polar bear tracks. And I was a bit freaked out, right? And I said, oh my gosh. I looked down and I look up and I said, do you think there's any polar bears out here? Because I was kind of scared. And without even thinking about it, he looks at me and he says, well, do you see any tracks? In other words, he was like, yes, dummy. Of course there's polar bears out here. You're in the land of the polar bear. You got to appreciate that this apex hunter on the planet is the king out here. So you have to respect the environment that you're in. And it's some of the great lessons that I've learned while on expedition. And I'm very fortunate while going on expedition, and my passion while being on expeditions is sharing these places with as many people as I possibly can. A huge component of that audience are students in schools around the world who will tap in through a live website that I create for every expedition, where they can see through satellite feeds videos and photos of the places that I'm in. Like this video here, this was shot in the Canadian Arctic in February, I believe, 2016. And this is how long it takes your iPhone to freeze at -65 when it's windy, right? But being able to take that video of the wind blowing that snow, of the sun, look how big the sun is. The sun is so big because of all the ice crystals in the atmosphere. The light reflects off of it, exploding the size of it. Being able to upload that video to both the website for school consumption and classroom consumption, but also to social media, and really give like a 7-second snapshot of what the Arctic looks like in winter. This video has been seen hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times. And I love the fact that somebody got to see the Canadian Arctic in winter, right? And it's not just the landscapes, if you will, of the places that I go. It's also being able to visit with so many interesting people when I'm on my expeditions and share the cultures and the stories of the people I meet. I ran 1,000 kilometers across the Patagonian desert, coast to coast across South America, through Argentina and Chile. And as I made my way across this rocky outcrop called the Meseta region of the foothills of the Andes in the desert, I met a gentleman named Mr. Garcia, and he lived in a large depression, a giant crater that was in this region of the Meseta, along with, over this massive area, a couple dozen families who had ranches and farms. And he was such a fascinating man because he was so in tune with his environment that he, in a place where there was no electricity, no running water, no gas, but he was not surviving, but thriving in this environment, living such a rich and an incredible life in a way that perhaps many of us in our lives don't necessarily get to experience. You know, case in point, I asked him, I said, well, if you don't have a clock and you don't have a calendar really that you sort of go by, how do you tell when, because with his livestock, to take care and tend to changing seasons? They have very difficult winters there. Henceforth, these ranches and farms being built down in these craters and depressions to block them from the winds that come in the winter. And he said, well, Ray, I can sense the change of the seasons. I can feel the change of the seasons. I can see it in my livestock, in his animals. He could see the change in the coat. He could just, by petting one of his animals, he knew that winter was coming, for example. And it's just that it was so mind-blowing how connected he was to his environment. And that truly is the best part about being an explorer, is meeting and learning from so many different people around the world, and being able to capture those stories, having friends who are, you know, award-winning filmmakers that make Hollywood films and shoot for magazines like National Geographic, come with me on these expeditions and be able to share the stories of the people and the new friends that I'm making all over the world. This is, by the way, this is John, the guy that took the photo in Russia. He took the photo in Namibia, and now someone's taken a photo of him, right? But being able to, for example, this quick little video that you're seeing play here, hopefully it's playing for you. This is Mongolia. This is the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. And I ran across Mongolia, a little over 2,000 kilometers, in summer 2013. And as I did purposefully, I ran across this desert during a time called Nadam, when there is a cultural festival that takes place across Mongolia, celebrating and making heroes of wrestlers, archers, and horse racers, that we wanted to share this snapshot of Mongolia and use the run as a thread that would weave together all of these stories of this amazing place and culture, so that students could understand and become part of the expedition as teammates, but also see with our eyes, if you will, through our eyes and our experiences, this colorful celebration called Nadam. The websites that I build are very interactive. Like, students can ask me questions like, how hot does it get when you're running across a desert? Well, as you can see in this thermometer picture, very hot. Some of the deserts that I've crossed are some of the hottest places on Earth. This is a photo from Death Valley, California, which I have crossed twice completely off-road, where temperatures can exceed in the center of Death Valley 55 degrees Celsius, plus it's a bit humid. I've been in the middle of Death Valley actually when thunderstorms are going off in the middle of July or August, and it's raining way high up, but it's so hot from the convections coming up from Death Valley that a lot of the rain droplets evaporate before they even hit the ground. And there's a rainbow in the distance. And yes, I'm getting speckled with a bit of rain, but it smells like springtime in Canada. But it's July in the hottest place on Earth in Death Valley, California. I get questions as well about what's the ground like in a desert? Well, it's sandy, as one would expect, and full of sand dunes, but most deserts are very rocky and hard to run on, and it really beats your body up.
Well, it's the start of day, I think we're on day 7, and had another great day yesterday, got 70K in, 40 miles, but I've been nursing a blister while I've been out here. This is what it looks like. Check this out.
Oh, are you guys able to see that? That's disgusting, isn't it? Ugh. But anyhow, that's what happens when you're running a lot of rocks for 30 days or 20 days or 50 days or however long in a row, right? But I also get asked about the colder places, the coldest places on Earth. I've actually trekked all the way to the South Pole, from Hercules Inlet, where the ocean is frozen, with 2 very good friends of mine, once again unsupported. This time our sleds were, I guess you could say, huge, as we made our way to the top of the bottom of the world, which is at about 3,000 meters of elevation. As Canadians, we were super proud to break the Guinness World Record for the fastest people ever to get to the South Pole, but even more proud that we got to connect our expeditions with classrooms all over the world. You could not be further away from home than being at the South Pole. Yet here we were with little videos sharing stories about endlessly deep crevasses like this one, and pushing these videos and stories and photographs into classrooms all over the world who, once again, partaked in the expedition, took part, I should say, in the expedition, and were our active teammates in achieving a world record. But the part of my job as an explorer that I love the most, truly, is being the founder of a nonprofit organization called Impossible to Possible. And our goal with Impossible to Possible is very straightforward. Deliver on these three words: empower, educate, inspire our global youth. And how do we do that? Well, simply put, I take young people between the ages of 16 to 21 years of age on expeditions all over the world that are learning based. Everything we do is 100% free. And I say that this is a passion part of my job because I love doing this. I'm a volunteer. This is not my paid job, but it's something that I'm very diligent in fundraising for. It's something that I'm very proud to take part in. This is a group of youth ambassadors from all over the world. That's what we call them, I2P Youth Ambassadors for short, as a team. And they come from all different backgrounds. You have people from South America on this expedition, First Nations youth. You have a bunch of youth coming together to run across the largest salt flat on Earth, the Bolivian Altiplano. And as they ran across this large salty expanse, they gathered the minerals needed to conduct chemistry experiments, which our professors on the expedition would take and then use and conduct experiments via satellite to classrooms around the world, and classrooms would conduct the same experiments using the same materials, but at different levels of elevation and environments, etc. So we take a curriculum and we attach it to the place. This video was shot in the Amazon jungle, the middle of the Amazon jungle. And our youth on this expedition trekked from one indigenous community to the next, learning about what biodiversity is. And then they would share what they'd learned about the Amazon and biodiversity from the indigenous peoples to classrooms all over the world.
Rainforest is pouring rain. It's exactly what I thought the rainforest would be. This has got to be the coolest day of my life. I'm on cloud 9 right now. This is awesome.
Well, I hope you can see that. I hope you could hear Jessie. She was 16 years old at the time when she made her way across the Amazon jungle. You can imagine, like, the Amazon, guys, it's full of snakes and spiders like this big. It's crazy, but yet these young people, 16, 17 years old, for the rest of their lives will remember that they not only trekked and carried all their gear through the middle of the Amazon, that they shared their experience with, I think we had 30,000 students from around the world following that expedition every single day to be part of it, right? It's sharing with youth the opportunity to learn that they too can overcome any challenges that they think that they might have, and then share that message with a global youth in classrooms. I love going on these youth expeditions. I think we've done 14 of them now. And I love answering their questions about things that they'll ask me about my own expeditions, like, what's the longest run you've ever done? What's the hardest thing you've ever done? I always say when we get around these campfires, and I'm going to answer those two questions. Well, let me tell you about the longest run first, and then we'll talk about the hardest thing I've ever done. The longest run I ever did was 7,500 kilometers. I ran clear across the Sahara Desert with two friends of mine, west to east, right through Africa, 6 countries, 111 days. We ran an average of 70 kilometers a day for 111 days. Can you imagine? And if you can see this slide from where you are, look at the last line on the slide, 2 showers the entire time that we were out there. We were pretty stinky, I have to tell you, but you didn't have to see your friends in a sandstorm, because you could smell them and know exactly how far away they were, right? But it's these runs, this long run across the Sahara Desert that truly taught me how extraordinary each and every one of us is, and how we are all capable of the extraordinary when we really apply ourselves. Obviously, the expedition itself was very difficult to do. 111 days, you're running in sand, sandstorms. You're in such a remote part of the world where overnight a vehicle can tip from the shifting sands during a sandstorm. But at the same time, as difficult as it was so eye-opening and inspiring because we learned so much on this expedition. I learned about a culture and a people of North Africa. I got to meet people and make lifelong friends and family, people that have come to visit with me, even here where I live in Chelsea, Quebec. I've learned through this expedition how we have so much more in common than we do different, and how precious and vital a resource like clean drinking water is. Running the Sahara, the expedition, taught me that. But more than that, and these things, it taught me something about myself. And it comes to the point in the story where I answered the question, what was the most difficult thing I ever did? When Charlie, Kevin, and I took this photo here at the end of our expedition, 111 days across the Sahara, we bumped our fists and then we walked over to the Red Sea that you see behind those people that come to see us finish. And our three hands were propped up above the water. And the minute our hands would go in the water, it would signify the end of the expedition. I looked at my hand and Charlie's and Kevin's, and I thought, wow, my hand is the same as these guys. And it sounds like a silly thing to say, but in my mind, I could not believe that I ran clear across the Sahara with these guys, because everything you've heard so far today didn't come from a lifelong athlete. I was someone who was a pack a day, sometimes 2 pack a day smoker, very unhealthy, among other unhealthy habits and sedentary lifestyle, who was not a runner until 3.5 years before I ran across the Sahara Desert. 7 years before running across the Sahara Desert, and you can tell by looking at me, I'm not that young. I got an idea to completely change my life. I was inspired to completely go from this very unhealthy, smoking, unhappy person to changing my life completely. And 7 years later, it led me across the Sahara Desert. Then in each and every one of us is this ability to do something extraordinary if we so choose to do it. I was not someone who grew up going and played hockey and baseball. Those are amazing things, but those are not my sports. I was someone who was not at all compelled to even attend phys ed class. It was a huge source of anxiety for me. I was not a sporty person. It wasn't until my late 20s, going into 30, that I decided I was no longer satisfied with being so unhappy. And I was no longer satisfied pretending to be happy on the outside, but inside not having any goals or passion in my life. And that I needed something, I needed to change. And I have a younger brother who inspired me to follow in his footsteps into the outdoors and start taking on some of these challenges. And as I did, and as I became passionate about what I was doing, things changed dramatically. Our hands plunged into the water after me glancing at the 3 of them, and the expedition was over. And I was walking back up, and my wife, Kathy, had run down the beach to join us. And she said, don't say anything. I want to know the first thing that came to your mind. And I said, well, no limits. And she said, what, you? I said, no, we human beings have no limits to what we're capable of achieving. I was a guy who never thought I was going to do anything in my life. And then at 30, things vastly changed. What are you going to do with it? She said, well, I'm going to create an organization that takes young people like you see in this little video on their own expeditions all over the world, so that they too can learn how, when we challenge ourselves, we learn things about ourselves, that we are all capable of the extraordinary if we really are willing to go after something and experience something in a completely new and different way. I'm over 50 now. I'm 52 years old. And every day I continue to learn about myself, and I continue to learn about us as human beings. That at this point in my career, I can safely say, when we set goals or find things in our lives that are unique to us, that we're truly passionate about, something that we can really sink our teeth into and really get behind, when we find what that is and we make it a bigger part of our lives and we work unbelievably hard towards our goals, we can achieve pretty much anything we set our minds to. That really at the end of the day, we become free from all boundaries. And that is my presentation to you guys. And I would love to take some questions from you. And before I do, because I know many of you may have questions that maybe you aren't going to ask me today, but in case you don't, these are my social media. I know all of you are on social media. So that's my Instagram page. So please feel free to follow me there. Facebook as well. I have a public page. You'll have to find it, but you just look on Facebook, you'll find me there. It's got a blue check beside my name. I get messages at both those. People follow my expeditions on both of those platforms, and I'm on other ones too. And those are my websites on the side that you can find. So let's open the floor to questions. In case anybody's talking, I can't hear you. And I don't know how the other thing works.
Okay, so we know you graduated from Earl of March, where we currently go to school. You're wondering, what year did you graduate from Earl?
Because graduate, because I'm not 100% sure I actually graduated. Let's just be perfectly clear about that. It would have been, are you ready for this? Like 1988, maybe? I know, cars weren't even invented then. It's crazy.
So I have a question coming from someone, and they ask you, how many goals do you set each day? Do you do one at a time?
That is such a great question. So every day when I wake up, I think to myself before I go out of bed, I'm going to try and find one thing during the day, even in the worst days. Everybody's got good days. Everybody has bad days. I'm going to try and find one thing that's truly a light during the day. Now I'm talking, it could be something as simple as making a really good cup of coffee because I drink a lot of coffee. It could be something super simple. It could be something like going for a run, whatever. And then at the end of the day, I look back through the day and I try to find three things before I go to sleep, however small, you know, that made me smile that day or whatever, and dwell on those things. Goal setting really has to start from the smallest thing. Instead of like coming up with a huge, big goals are awesome, but you have to have the smaller ones to get there. So I would say on a day-to-day basis, I don't necessarily set specific daily goals, but instead I try to find things to celebrate on a day-to-day basis. And then I have bigger goals each year, like expeditions.
There's another question from someone. Is there an adventure you'd love to run again?
I have been to Baffin Island in the Canadian Arctic. I've crossed it 9 times. So I'll probably go back for a 10th at some point. Death Valley, I'm supposed to go back there and do an expedition this summer. I'm hoping I can. So those are the places that I kind of go back to. I realize they're at opposite ends of the thermometer, but I love that. So that's, yeah, sort of where I'm at.
Interesting.
Another question. Thank you. Another question is, do you have a favorite experience or adventure?
Well, that's a great question. You know, and I'm not trying to be funny when I say it, but my favorite adventure is probably the last one I was on, because that's the one I remember the most. But there's been many expeditions that I've really loved to be on. Boy, it's a tough question. I really loved across the Atacama Desert, the one where I had the blister. And that had a lot of memories for me because it was really tough, but I was actually able to get it done. And I was very proud to have done that expedition. So I guess that would be right up there.
I have a question from Tyson. Have you ever gone to a situation where you were lucky to get out of it?
Yes, Tyson, I have. As a matter of fact, I've had a lot of close calls. Now, I plan my expeditions more than I plan my trips to the grocery store, but I have had really close calls. One time in the Arctic, I broke through some ice and almost went underneath the ice in a river, in a fast-flowing river, which of course would have been, you know, I would have been done. I almost stepped on a fleur-de-lance snake once in the Amazon, which is the most poisonous snake, or one of the most poisonous snakes in the world. That would have been really bad and probably not ended well. I've had parasites. I've had all kinds of stuff over the years. So it's been a mixed bag, you know?
We have another question here, and they ask, how do you deal with the language barrier on your expeditions?
So depending on the expedition, the youth expeditions, we have an entire staff that goes with our youth ambassadors. And so that will involve many local contacts that we have. I'm very fortunate that in many of the places where I'm on expeditions, I have a lot of close friends. Oh, they're almost like family. And so they do translation for me, but I as well try to learn as much of the local language or keywords and phrases that I can as well to be respectful when I'm visiting various countries.
I have a question from Wes Carlton. How do you finance your incredible journeys?
Oh, good question. Good question. And everybody wants to know that one. So the youth expeditions, are funded by my sponsors. My sponsors fund me when I go to do my expeditions. That's part of it. And then the other part of it is I work really, really hard in my various businesses to raise enough money to take care of my family, to also invest in my own expeditions. So it's sort of like this revolving business. Everything's connected and they all work, it all works together in some crazy way.
Someone is asking, what's the coolest animal you have ever come across?
I have seen so many different animals. I love zebras and I love elephants and giraffes. I've seen lots of those in the wild on expedition in Africa. But I think the craziest animal that I saw tarantula once on one of my trips to the Amazon, and it was like literally, it was this big. And I'll never forget, it was on the ground and I almost stepped on it, right? Like it was right there and it didn't like scurry away. It just kind of slowly walked away. And I was like, I'm Canadian. I've never seen anything like that before. This was the size of like a cat. It was a spider though. So that was one of the craziest things.
God, spiders are scary. I have a question from Avery. Can you recommend a place you think everyone should go see one day?
Oh, our Canadian Arctic, period. You have to visit the Canadian Arctic. It's so amazing. Yeah.
I have a question from Mr. Salmon's class, and they're asking, what music do you listen to stay motivated?
Oh, that's a great question. I listen to all types of music. So it depends on the expedition I'm on. And so I listen to everything from hard rock, hip hop, classical music even. It could be trance. It could be, I listen to everything. And yeah, it's just whatever mood I'm in. And sometimes I listen to podcasts. Like lately I've been finding myself when I'm running, I'll listen to like news podcasts, which I know sounds probably really lame. But you know, trying to keep up to date. So it's interesting. I change it all the time.
I have a question. Did any of your friends and family ever attempt to stop you from running these extreme distances around the world?
No, I mean, you know, I've had people in my life at various stages of my life say, you shouldn't do this, you can't do that. And I'll tell you something, for 30 years of my life, the first 30, I like to say, I talked myself out of doing things because of what others would think or what I feared might happen, etc. And now I live a life where I choose to make things happen. I own the decisions I make. It's no one else's fault. I make the decisions that I make and I go after it. So I love to have advice from my friends and family, but at the end of the day, we have to own the decisions that we make, you know?
And it's amazing that you can do all of this. And so there is someone who is asking you, how do you get the money to do all of these things? Do you have sponsors?
Yes, so it's twofold. I have sponsors and I do a lot of different, like I have a guiding company, which you can see the name there. I have a coffee company. So all these things that I've built over time with a lot of hard work. And I've been on both sides. I've had absolutely no money, been able to barely pay rent in a small apartment and, you know, with no furniture or anything. So now I have no problem working very hard to be able to do the things that I love to do. Yeah, you know, it's for me, resources and finances are a means to which I can hopefully live the life of passion that I love. And we only have one life. We have one, just one. So it's making the most out of every single day that you possibly can, right? So I'm willing to work hard to get those sponsors and everything else I need to do.
That's amazing. I have another question from someone. Do you use a compass while running and how do you not get off track?
Great question again. So I'm very good at map reading skills. So I can use a compass as well. Most times I use a GPS now because that's the technology. And once I can find myself on a map and I know where the sun is, if I can see the sun and it's not cloudy, I can pretty much find my way out of wherever I am. So, and you know what? For anybody that has a watch that's not a digital watch that has like hands, if you Google it, you can see how you can use your watch as a compass using the sun. So learning to navigate has been a critical piece, obviously, of what I do because I'm cross country on many of these trips.
This question is about the environment, and someone asks, how on the Arctic did you see a lot of ice melting because of global warming?
Oh, that's such a good question. So there's one specific area of Baffin Island where I have been going since 2007. And I used to navigate to a glacier that I could see in the distance. Now, when I go past that glacier, every time I go past it, which most recently was in January 2020, I can no longer see the glacier. I have to look back, and the glacier has receded over a kilometer. So yes, I've seen evidence of climate change for sure.
Wow. How much time do you need to recover between expeditions?
Well, typically I take about a year to train for an expedition to a year and a half. And then recovery after an expedition is probably about a month. So it all depends. And the older I get, the more strict I am about my nutrition and my sleep and all that stuff. So it's funny. I recover better now that I'm older because it's harder to feel better when you're older. So you do everything you can to make sure that you're 100% on. Guys, I'm going to have to wrap up here. So I'm going to have time for one more question. And I, again, will invite you all to follow me on the social media platforms. When you get a chance, join me there. And if you have other questions, let me know. I will eventually answer them all. And you can reach me through those platforms on direct messaging, etc. But is there one more question that I can answer?
Benny, you want to ask the last one?
Wait, what?
You want to ask the last one?
Sure. I mean, I'll just pick a random one. This person asks, does a marathon look like a piece of cake to you now?
No, I tell you something. The greatest challenges that each of you will face in your life and the greatest things you achieve are relative to you as an individual. So what I mean by that, when I ran across the Sahara, somebody else asked me, a friend of mine, what did it feel like to look back and know that you ran 7,500 kilometers through the sand? And I said, you know what? It felt exactly the same as the day that I ran my first 5-kilometer training run and I didn't have to walk. It was the same sense of accomplishment. So when you achieve something in your life that feels so amazing to you, you can't compare that achievement to anyone else's achievement or to what someone else has done. So a marathon is as difficult to me as 7,500 kilometers as is the first 5K that I've done. So it's being able to put things in perspective and realize that the things that you will achieve in your life and the great things that you will achieve, you cannot compare yourself to someone else or look for comparisons in any other way. Just celebrate what it is that you do and the way it feels for you, right?
All right.
All right. Thank you all so much today for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ray, for being here and for your time and for answering all those great questions.
On behalf of the NCSSAA, we really appreciate you speaking with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. See you all again soon. And I'll probably see you on social and otherwise. Thank you.
Yes. Have a good day.